Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us today. We love breaking down complex ideas into really clear, actionable insights. And today, well, we're unpacking a fascinating everyday mystery. Picture this. Two people take the exact same action last year, but they end up with wildly different life outcomes. Let's get right into it. So here's the scenario. Let's call it the $5 coffee mystery. Last year, two different people are just going about their morning routine, and they both make the exact same choice. They completely refuse to buy a $5 coffee. Both of them look at that price tag, shake their heads, and say, nope, not gonna do it. On the surface, if you were just walking by, their actions looked absolutely identical. But fast forward to today, one of those individuals actually became significantly wealthier, building up their savings and really improving their overall life. The other person, well, they just slowly alienated and pushed all their friends away. This right here perfectly establishes the absolutely critical knowledge gap between being truly frugal and just being cheap. Chapter 1. The Frugal versus Cheap Illusion. Okay, let's dive into this. We really need to understand why these two mindsets are so incredibly easy to confuse. It's an illusion that traps a lot of well-meaning folks. Because from the outside looking in, the frugal person and the cheap person look literally identical. They both actively spend less money, they both hunt for good deals, and they both try extremely hard to avoid wasting their cash. If you just look at their actions in a vacuum, you literally cannot tell them apart. So the crucial point we have to understand is the underlying psychology driving those actions. Frugality, that is an absolute obsession with value. Cheapness, on the other hand, is a blind obsession with getting the absolute lowest price no matter what. It's a completely different way of processing the world around you. Chapter 2, The Math of True Value. Now, moving from the psychology to the hard math, let's look at a super easy everyday example, buying a pair of shoes. A cheap person goes to the store and buys a $30 pair of shoes every single year just because that happens to be the absolutely cheapest option sitting on the shelf. But a frugal person, they will gladly spend $120 upfront on high-quality pair, knowing for sure that they're built to last for 5 full years. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive inefficiency of cheapness. If you run the numbers over those 5 years, the cheap person actually spent $150 in total, while the frugal person only spent $120 once. The cheap person only sees the price tag today, right? But the frugal person calculates the total cost. One person spends less today, sure, but the other actually spends less overall. Chapter 3. The High Cost of Cheapness. Because the stakes aren't just mathematical, are they? They're deeply emotional. Picture yourself sitting around a restaurant table with a group of your closest friends. The bill finally comes, and the cheap person starts arguing over tiny, fractional differences just to save like $3. It creates this incredibly awkward tension for everyone sitting there. Is saving $3 really worth that? A frugal person gets that relationships and social capital have a massive value too. Sometimes being obsessed with saving a few dollars costs you way more in social capital than the money was ever worth. Now, what's really fascinating here is where the distinct focus lies for each mindset. Cheap people get hyper-focused on saving pennies in tiny, insignificant amounts. But frugal people, they keep their eyes firmly fixed on the big gains. They'll happily spend their money if the return on investment actually makes sense, whether that means buying books, paying for online courses, getting a gym membership, or investing in essential business tools. And this brings us to the most tragic part, the invisible costs. The real hidden danger of being cheap isn't just about the money you manage to save, but rather the huge life opportunities you never end up taking. When you're entirely focused on being cheap, you skip that great networking event, you ignore learning that high-income skill, you leave your dream business unstarted, and you completely avoid unforgettable life experiences. It's a real tragedy. Chapter 4. The 3-question frugal test. So, how do we actually fix this in our own lives? Well, before you buy something, I want you to walk it through this simple, actionable framework. First, ask yourself, does this improve my life? Second, will it save money later? And third, is the value greater than the cost? It is really that straightforward. If the answer to these questions is yes, go ahead and buy it. If the answer is no, skip it. Ultimately, applying this framework leads to two entirely distinct life trajectories. Being cheap inevitably leads to a smaller life, one that's totally constricted by fear and missing out. Being frugal, however, leads to a significantly better life, filled with rich experiences and, at the end of the day, a lot more wealth. There's this idea that beautifully summarizes the ultimate goal of true wealth building. It goes like this: frugal people aren't trying to spend the least money. They are trying to extract the most value out of every single dollar. That is the real difference most people completely miss when managing their resources. It's not about the lowest price, it's about the highest value. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Are you building a better life or just a smaller one? Take a moment to really think about that. If you found this explainer helpful and you want to learn more ways to build true wealth without sacrificing your relationships or your quality of life, definitely remember to subscribe. And hey, please leave a comment down below about a time you noticed the glaring difference between cheap and frugal in your own life. I literally can't wait to read them. Keep focusing on value, and I'll see you in the next explainer.